All right, we're going to start now.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stacy Wheatley. I am a clinical health consultant lead with True Health Diagnostics, and I'm going to be moderating your webinar today. Today, we're going to be discussing the Happy Gut, Happy Life. Our presenter is also one of our clinical health consultants with True Health. Her name is Tammy Gallo, and she's a wealth of knowledge, well qualified, and very passionate about this subject. Tammy is a registered dietitian nutritionist and a registered nurse, so she's been through quite the ringers with academia and medicine, and now she's extremely passionate about functional medicine and the role that the gut plays in all of our common complaints and ailments and chronic disease. So she's got quite an impressive resume, but personally she loves all forms of exercise, particularly getting out in nature, walking in the woods, and meditating, like doing scripture memory and prayer to get calmed and centered. Her approach to health is integrative of mind, body, and spirit. She likes to partner with people to develop a simple step-by-step individualized program to their personal wellness. And most importantly, she's the mother of 4 grown children and grandmother to 3 and 1 on the way. So a couple housekeeping items. We are going to try to hold all questions to the end, so that we can make sure we get through all the slides in the hour. At the end, or if you ask questions as we go, that's okay. I'll kind of put them in the queue to answer when we get done. If somebody could type in the questions box, just let me know that everybody can hear me nice and clear, and we will get started. Awesome. Looks like y'all can hear me. Thanks a lot. All right, Tammy, take it away.
All right, well, thank you so much, Stacy, and thank all of you so much for taking time out of your day to sit with us and explore one of the really most exciting discoveries regarding our health. And we have entitled this Happy Gut, Happy Life. And I have to say, I've been practicing, gosh, 35 at least years, and I've never been more excited about this discovery and the new frontier that is unfolding before us as we discover how critically important the health of our gut, our GI system really is. And it truly is the seat of health. It's the beginning of the foundation, if you will, of our health. We could have entitled this, you know, Healthy Gut, Healthy Life, or If the Gut Ain't Happy, Ain't Nobody Happy, in regards to all the other bodily systems, because it is showing us without a doubt that there is a ripple effect throughout the entire body, with the gut affecting every aspect of our health. So, and I usually always have this problem that it won't advance the slide in the beginning. So maybe just practice this. All right. Please advance. All right, Stacy, if you have any suggestions, feel free.
Hey, Tammy, what if you close it out and try to restart it?
Close it out and restart it. Can I do like a control something to get it to go? No. All right. We do apologize. Bear with us while we solve a technical issue here. So I don't want to X out of GoToMeeting this day. That's my only concern.
Right.
There we go. Like the 6 times the charm. Okay. All right. So this is really, we're returning full circle to an ancient wisdom that started with Hippocrates, who was the father of modern medicine a few thousand years ago. Very clearly stated, all disease begins in the gut, and we would be very wise to adhere to this sage ancient wisdom and we're coming full circle right back to it, and our research is showing that we've known this intuitively, instinctively for centuries, but what's exciting is the modern technology is proving it beyond a shadow of a doubt. And Dr. Alessio Fasano is one of those cutting-edge scientists with emerging wisdom about the gut. He discovered many things about the gut, particularly in relation to gluten and celiac. He is world-renowned, and his saying is, the gut is not like Las Vegas. What happens in the gut does not stay in the gut. Again, just communicating that whole concept that it's all connected, everything affects everything, and it begins with the gut. You know, all of our systems are interconnected, and most importantly, what we want to delve into today is how the gut and the microbiome together influence our health. Now, if you have not heard of the term microbiome yet, you will. It is a amazing cutting-edge discovery. It's really going to change everything in terms of not only how we look at our health, but literally what it means to be human and our interconnection with the earth and the environment and these microorganisms in our bodies and in the earth as a whole. All right, so Dr. Joshua Lederberg, Nobel Prize laureate, gave us a formal definition of the microbiome, and he has given it the definition: the totality of microbes, their genomes, and environmental interactions in and on the human organism. So let's just sort of sit with that for a second. And I am going to say from the beginning, we're going to get a little sciencey in the beginning. There's going to be some terms that might be new to you. I'm going to do my best to sit there and let it sort of sink in. And it's important to get some of those principles down before we can move into the practical of what to do about it. So it's important to understand why, you know, what's happening before we can get to the what, like what do I do about this, or how do I improve this? So again, this is cutting edge. Some of it will sound almost a little science fiction-y, like really? But honestly, tons of research is going on, and it's very exciting. So when we look at this, the totality of microbes, so these little microorganisms that we can't see, their genomes, so genetic material, and the environmental interactions in and on the human organism. We now know that basically this is talking about the whole collection of microorganisms that are just, you know, that live in and on the human body and their genes. That's what we're talking about. And what has allowed this new frontier of science to develop is computer technology that allows scientists to discover the DNA and identify these microorganisms very quickly. It used to be to do this would cost literally millions of dollars and take a long period of time to determine someone's genetic sequence. But now with rapid computers, they are identifying all these little microorganisms by their DNA. They're just beginning to classify them and identify what their roles are in our body, how we interact with them. So I liken this discovery and this science to when we invented telescopes that allowed us to see out into the vast universe beyond. And we just sat in awe when we saw how vast the universe is around us. And it's exactly the same thing, but just internally. Now this DNA sequencing and looking inside, we see that there literally is a vast universe within us. And it's really very exciting. And hopefully, as you will see, there's so much that we can do to sort of work with those little microorganisms for our own health. So, okay, few definitions and concepts that are really critical. Microbiome, again, small biology, little creatures that we can't see. Think of it like a gut garden. That's a more gentle visual, if you will, that we literally have a garden of life within our GI tract, an ecosystem in our gut, like a rainforest, right? And within that forest, there's gut bugs or probiotics that are the beneficial bacteria that live in our intestines. And we'll give a formal definition of probiotics in just a sec. So the microbiome, or the gut garden, is the entire collection of bacteria, viruses, and fungi that live in our intestine. They live in a delicately balanced ecosystem. Now, I do have bacteria bolded there because the microbiome is primarily made up of bacteria, but there are these other organisms. And there's even some Dion viruses and fungi. But the key is balance. Remember, balance and then diversity. Okay, so ecosystems have strength and diversity. Ecosystems that are in balance are healthy. So diversity equals resilience equals health. So again, we're all concerned about global warming and the rainforest and that we're losing this biodiversity in our earth. We are so connected with the earth and the microorganisms. It's affecting our internal gut garden. So we're always looking for a magic bullet. Since I've been in the field forever, just look at the magazines when you're waiting in the grocery store. There's headlines about this miracle cure for this, that, or the other thing. And I was thinking, if there ever was a magic bullet, this is it for real. And it's called biodiversity of your gut garden, because the more variety and diversity you can have with those microorganisms, the more resilience and health that you're going to have. And we're going to be going into practical ways that you can increase that diversity. So on the downside, dysbiosis, or if you think dysfunctional. So dysbiosis is an imbalance of the bacteria within that digestive system. And there's many reasons for that. We'll be covering that as well. So again, ecosystem in dysbiosis or without diversity is disease because we lack resilience. All right. So probiotic comes from the Greek word meaning for life. The World Health Organization has this definition. Probiotics are defined as live microorganisms that, when administered in adequate amounts, confer a health benefit on the host. There is now mounting evidence that selected probiotic strains can provide health benefits to the human host. So there you have it, right from the top, the World Health Organization. All right, so microbiome by the numbers. Again, bear with me. Like we're looking at the vast universe beyond, this just gives you a comprehension of the vastness of the universe within us. So every bodily surface hosts a myriad of microorganisms, starting with the skin, 1 trillion resident bacteria, our mouth, about 10 billion. And the microbiome does start in the mouth. The mouth is part of our GI system. The gut itself has about 100 trillion different microorganisms with a total weight of 2.5 pounds, which interestingly is about the weight of our brain as well. And the gut has been referred to as the second brain. So lots going on in our gut that influences our health. So the current estimates for just the oral and intestinal microbiota is about 500 to 1,000 different species. And what we are finding that 30 to 40 species make up about 99% of the total population. And this is where the bulk of the research is going on right now. They're just starting to classify the different species and identify their specific roles in our body, because they do all have their own specific role to play. So symbiosis means like a partnership, if you will. So we are literally sort of these superorganisms in a sense, in a symbiotic relationship with bacteria. Our human cells, we would have about 100 trillion, or I'm sorry, 10 trillion cells. And as opposed to the total microbiome or biota, those terms are interchangeable, we have about 100 trillion cells, outnumbering human cells 10 to 1. Now when we're looking at genes, our genetic material, the Human Genome Project, which started in the 1990s, identified about 20,000 human genes. And the scientists were left sort of scratching their heads because they knew, they had estimated that it takes about 70,000 genes to do all of the bodily processes we know are necessary within our body. So they started to look to these bacteria, and that was when they discovered that, oh my goodness, all these little microorganisms have their own unique genome or genetic profile. So the combined genes of these microbes is about 3.3 million, outnumbering human genes 150 to 1. So suffice it to say, it is one of the most complex microbial ecosystems on the entire planet that we have right within us. And where does it all begin? So ideally, actually, I started this research about a year ago, and that first bullet point, you could not find that in the research. We just recently discovered that it begins in the womb. We used to think the first seeding of the bacteria for the baby was as it went through the birth canal, but we now know literally there's little microorganisms in the mom's gut that are traveling up to the womb, implanting themselves into the baby, sort of seeding the baby's immune system, if you will, from the very beginning as the baby's developing in mom's womb. And as the baby then, in a perfect world, have to be born vaginally, as the baby's going through that birth canal, is then seeded, if you will, as the baby goes through the birth canal, through the mouth and on the baby's skin, with healthy bacteria that would be in the mother's vagina. Then add to that, positively breastfeeding provides even more beneficial bacteria from the mom's GI tract. We know that the breast milk is not sterile, the womb is not sterile. Now, for those of us like myself that were born by C-section and were not breastfed, there's hope, and that's one of the reasons this topic is so exciting, and we will cover some of that in just a moment. But again, in a perfect world, this is how it all begins. All right, so Dr. Blasner, who is, again, one of the cutting-edge scientists in this field, says it's reasonable to propose that the composition of the microbiome and its activities are involved in most, if not all, of the biological processes that constitute human health and disease. So again, just let that sort of soak in for a second, what he's saying. Intricately related, these little microorganisms that we can't even see with the naked eye are involved throughout our entire body with every one of our biological processes. So when I say that this is one of the biggest discoveries in medicine, it truly, truly is. It's going to change everything. All right, so the part that gives us hope is that when we eat, we are feeding the microbiome. And all these years we sort of have been focusing on, eating to lose weight or eating for cardiovascular health, and that's very good, but we really need to shift it to even a deeper level, that what does our microbiome need to eat to be healthy? Because they're the organisms that are really determining our health at a much deeper, profound level. So, and again, if we are eating lots of sugar and gluten and processed foods, inflammatory foods, we're going to be seeding bad bugs that aren't really helping us. As a matter of fact, can be hurting us. And conversely, positively, if we're eating a variety of prebiotic, fiber-rich foods. And let me just give you a quick definition of prebiotic. It's basically food for the probiotic. So pre meaning before. So prebiotic, fiber-rich foods feed good bacteria. So the more good fiber-rich foods we have, right from the earth with a variety of different fibers, we're going to be seeding a diverse community of good bugs. And community is also a good term to keep in your mind because they do interact with each other in a community. All right, so what are the functions of the microbiome? These are just a few. So again, I had to even pare this down. Digestion and energy harvesting. And what we mean by energy harvesting is literally certain microorganisms are going to extract more calories out of the food that we eat. And we would call those the bad guys, right? Those are not good bugs. They're going to get every single calorie out. And that's been associated with a higher degree of obesity if you have more of this particular strain. And they're called firmicutes, and we'll be mentioning those in a little bit as well. Again, I told you this might sound a little science fiction-y, but that's the name they've given those particular gut bugs, firmicutes. All right, so detoxification, they're very active with detoxification in our gut, keeping out those bad things and not allowing them to enter. So they produce multiple compounds that are essential for human functioning. Short-chain fatty acids, I have a slide on that right after. Amino acids, neurotransmitters, vitamins, hormones, you name it. If we need it, they make it. They modify our immune system. They influence the expression of our genes, like a dimmer switch. And again, this is one of the most exciting aspects of knowing we're in a symbiotic relationship with these gut bugs. What we eat determines if we're going to have good or bad bugs. If we have good bugs, they're going to upregulate our good genes that we acquired, from our parents that will keep us healthy, and they will downregulate our bad genes, so like a dimmer switch. So they are literally that powerful in our body. So one of the specific functions of the microbiome is they produce these compounds called short-chain fatty acids. Again, another area of research identifying these specific short-chain fatty acids. There's about 4 major ones we're aware of. Butyrate is one that it's the major energy source for the cells of the colon. So if you have healthy cells or healthy microbiome that's going to produce this butyrate, it's going to keep those cells of your colon, again, nice and healthy, helping to prevent, colon cancer, lots of GI diseases. It's a good barrier. It regulates bodily functions, again, modulate the immune system. So these short-chain fatty acids themselves specifically are involved in this. And one bodily function that I was just reading about a few weeks ago is they help with the glucose insulin metabolism, certain short-chain fatty acids that the microbiome produces. And then the microbiome itself provides a protective mucus lining for the gut, keeping it healthy and moist and has more integrity to it, sort of like, some nice soothing hand cream, if you will, for our gut. All right, microbiome and weight maintenance. I know that's, one of the things that we are most interested in is what can we do to control our weight? And again, good news here. Like I said, I've been a dietitian for many years, and back in the day, old school, we were pretty simplistic about things. Energy in, energy out. If you're overweight, well, you must be eating too many calories or you're not exercising enough. End of story. So with these new discoveries, we realize it's quite complicated, actually. There's a lot of experiments going on with sterile mice and fecal transplants, and yes, that is what it sounds like. They literally take a stool from one mouse and they transfer it into these sterile mice that, and then they see what happens. And that has just astounded us. So quick recap. They might take the stool from an obese mice and then implant that in a sterile mouse, and lo and behold, yep, that mouse becomes obese, even though the food intake has not changed. And they're seeing that it shifts back to more of those firmicutes. The more firmicutes you have, you tend to extract more calories, but in an insult to injury sort of way, it doesn't increase the amount of nutrients that you absorb, only the calories. Just an interesting, very recent discovery is as they're doing these fecal transplants and they're focusing on like how it affects the weight of the mice, they're noticing something interesting, that if they take stool from a mouse that's more anxious, if you will, and they put it into the sterile mice, those mice now have anxious behaviors. There is one condition that the FDA has approved fecal transplants for in human beings, and this is in the cases of resistant C. difficile, which is a very dangerous situation. It's sometimes very difficult to cure this with antibiotics, and when people have these fecal transplants from a healthy donor, there's a 90% cure rate with C. diff, and it's almost instant. So the FDA could not dismiss the strong positive benefits, so they approved it for that particular situation because it can be life-threatening if you don't intervene. But again, they noticed that sometimes if the donor had anxiety, the recipient, even though they were cured of their C. diff, began to display anxious behaviors. So we just need to proceed with caution. There's a lot more research. We need to tread very lightly with this, and we're not anywhere near the place where we could say, oh yeah, I want to have a stool transfer from my skinny friend, so I could be skinny too. We are not there. But again, stay tuned as the research continues. So increased amounts of firmicutes and yeast have been associated with sugar cravings and obesity. So again, we can eat in a way that decreases the population of the yeast and the firmicutes. And it's that vicious cycle, the catch-22. The more sugar you eat, the more processed foods, refined carbs, the more firmicutes and yeast you're going to have, and then they are going to cause cravings. They literally affect our appetite, sort of like, feed me, I want more sugar. So, but you can, stay the course and flip that community of bacteria to a more healthy one and diminish the population of the firmicutes and yeast. And this is really one of the practical applications and things that we can work with you on at True Health with our clinical health consultants. And then this concept of emaciated microbes. Again, they need fiber to exist. If we're not eating the vegetables and the plant-based foods, they are starving. And again, they're screaming, feed me. So we need to, we have 100 trillion mouths to feed. We need to think about what does our microbiome need to be happy, healthy, and satisfied so we can be the same. All right, so belly blues. Signs and symptoms of a disrupted microbiome. They say that GI disturbances, I think, is the #2 reason that people see their doctor. It is not normal to have these things, but in America, we've almost sort of accepted that this is, you have gas and bloating, you have that increased abdominal girth, but it is not. And the best targeted therapy is to balance out that microbiome. Again, mood disorders, about 90% of the serotonin in our bodies is produced by the microbiome. Again, just let that sink in. Serotonin is one of our feel-good chemicals. So with depression and anxiety, this is an area where more psychiatrists are looking to the gut to heal the brain, to heal our mood. Lots of hope there. So again, the causes of digestive distress and that dysbiosis or disrupted microbiome is our poor diet, the Western diet, the standard American or SAD diet with processed food, sugars, low fiber intake. Then environmental factors, toxins, and we'll talk about some of that in the foods we eat. Stress, leaky gut, we have a whole slide on that. Inflammation, lack of exercise, and movement. All right, so again, we talked about where the initial seeding of the microbiome would occur as the baby goes through the birth canal and formula feeding. And then again, a layer of stress on that microbiome. And I was a labor and delivery nurse for a while. We just, sort of gave antibiotics just in case, the baby developed an infection as a result. And we thought, that was, at the time, it was good medicine. But we've learned a lot since then. So lots of different things we can do to minimize that. And of course, I want to just be clear here, if you need a cesarean or you need an antibiotic, you have to have one. They are life-saving in many situations. It's just you want to be more judicious. Like 1 in 3 births are cesarean, and the World Health Organization has issued a decree that antibiotic overuse is epidemic, and it's causing a lot of resistant strains. So we just need to be very judicious with the use of these. As well, some of the other medications, antacids, antibiotics, nonsteroidal, anti-inflammatory, again, lots of things of these meds disrupt that environment in our gut. Ultra clean hygiene, again, we could go on about that. We sanitize everything. Some of our cleaning products, and as a matter of fact, there's research coming out, if children that live on farms, children that have a pet, tend to have less allergies and less asthma because they are being exposed to, again, a variety of gut bugs that are giving them the resiliency to handle the environment. But when we, kind of keep them under wraps, they're compromised in their ability to handle, life. So again, we want to have basic hygiene, and we're not saying, don't wash your hands and don't take a shower. It's just we need to think a little bit about how we can have a healthy exposure to interact with our earth in a sense. All right, so stress plays a huge factor in this, and we now know, again, it's like a two-way street. Our very thoughts, if they're anxious and stressful, are literally negatively impacting our microbiome. They sense that. So truly a symbiotic relationship. So we want to watch our stress, get enough exercise, sleep, right? 8 hours is the magic number. That is important to reset our whole circadian rhythm and decrease inflammation. And then just, again, psychosocial interactions and emotional support are very important. So here we're going to get a little sciencey here, but it's important to get this visual in your head. So here's a picture of our gut, our GI tract, and you can see to the left a healthy GI tract. And by the way, our entire GI tract, there's about 20 feet of it, is one single cell thick. So that is all that is separating us from the outside world. So very important that that one single cell layer be intact with that normal tight junction, only allowing the good things in that should get in and keeping out toxins and larger molecules that should not be coming in. So if you look to the right, you see those gaps where, again, things can get in that should not be allowed in. And right below, I want you to pay attention, right below that, the cells of the GI tract, we see the bloodstream. It's right there with the circulating immune complex. So they estimate that about 80% of our immune system is sitting right there, right at the wall, sort of on guard, watching what comes in and determining if it's friend or foe, friend or foe. So on the right, where you have those gaps and those larger molecules, the toxins are leaking in, your immune system is just going crazy and it's on hyper alert all the time, causing inflammation and oxidative stress and what we would call immune dysfunction at that point. And basically, those three things, inflammation, oxidative stress, and immune dysfunction is sort of the triad, if you will, of what's the root cause of many of our chronic diseases, whether it's heart disease or Alzheimer's. But again, you see the first interface line of defense is healing that gut so that the immune system can now calm and the inflammation's down, the immune dysregulation and the oxidative stress are all sort of calmed. And we have noticed or seen in the past several decades that autoimmune diseases have quadrupled. And we're starting to see that this gut permeability and leaky gut is one of the reasons that autoimmune diseases might be on the rise. Because we used to say, oh, the body got confused and it started attacking our connective tissue in the case of lupus, or our thyroid in the case of some of those autoimmune diseases, when in fact the body didn't get confused at all. It's just that since it's on such a high hyper alert, there's going to be collateral damage when you have that much activation of the immune system. So calm down the gut, and we can treat a whole host of potential diseases. And this is one of the reasons at True Health we have just recently added an autoimmune panel, because we're realizing if we're going to heal the heart, which we've been about for many years, we need to heal the gut, we need to deal with some of these autoimmune disorders as well. So if you'd like more information about that, give us a call and we'd be happy to explain some of our new labs to you. And the clinical health consultants, as always, are available for guidance in that. All right, so again, I'm just going to breeze through this because I know we're short of time. And if you want the PowerPoints, let us know and we'd be happy to send those to you. But again, some of the environmental insults to our gut that cause those openings, those gaps. So stress, alcohol, caffeine in excess, allergies, sensitivities, those medications we mentioned. Now gluten, I did do an entire webinar on gluten back at the end of April, and you can still access that on our True Health Facebook page if you'd like to know more about that. But chemicals, pesticides, artificial ingredients, antibiotics that are in food, as we ingest those into our body, of course they're going to impact that gut garden and decrease the diversity, if you will, of the microbiome. All right, so inflammation, if it's acute or like a cut or something, it's a good thing. If it's chronic, it's harmful and unrelenting, leading to that cascade. All right, again, some of the inflammatory markers we test at True Health related to inflammation are listed. And I need to just rush ahead. I want to get to some of the positive things. How to heal your gut. All right, so mend, right? That's a comforting word. How can we mend our digestion? Kathy Madonna Swift came up with this acronym: mind your digestion, E, eliminate the problem foods, nourish the body and the belly, dietary supplements, and sustaining practices. So mind your digestion. We want to have calm, mindful eating. Separate eating from other activities. Experience the pleasure of eating with all of your senses. Pay attention to hunger cues. You don't want to overeat. So if you eat to about 80% full, it takes about 20 minutes for those hunger cues to reach the brain. So no fast food in any sense of the word, right? And then portion control. And again, mindful eating, reduce the stress while we're eating, because that causes problems with our microbiome and digestion. All right, so take pleasure in meals at set times of the day. And this is really key. As in the external universe, it operates with order and structure. So does our internal universe. And our gut functions best when we're eating at set times of the day. And this concept of temporary food restriction, 9 to 12 hours, so confine eating to 12 hours of the day, and then 12 hours of not eating, so that you give your gut some time to rest. So if you stop eating about 2 to 3 hours prior to bedtime, this will help with that tremendously. You want the gut to sleep and rest as well, all right? So eliminate the problem foods, which are the processed foods. And so just a quick rundown. Real food does not have an ingredient list. It is the ingredient, right? So things that come out of the earth, your produce, your vegetables, your fruits, things like that. But if it comes in a package, we want you to go right to the ingredient list. If you do not recognize the ingredients, you see that there's chemicals there, it's probably not a real food, and it could cause some problems with your microbiome. Trans fats, those partially hydrogenated fats, and high fructose corn syrup, those are two of the worst offenders, and we would say those are zero tolerance ingredients. If you see those in the ingredient list, you want to put it back and walk away. Antibiotics in meat and dairy, we could go on about that, but again, it just follow it through logically. If they're putting these antibiotics in the meat and in our dairy and we ingest them, it's going to be killing off good bugs as well. It's not, antibiotics are not discriminate. Genetically modified foods and pesticides, that's another, again, it could be a whole presentation. As best as we can, and I know it's difficult to afford organic, but as best as we can, and I'll have some lists there that help you sort of streamline those choices. Artificial sweeteners, lots of research going on with how they disrupt the microbiome, as well as excess added sugars, again, increasing those firmicutes. We don't want too many of those guys. All right, so I think we've talked enough about that. Let's kind of rush along here. So nourish the body and the belly. So Michael Pollan, his 7-stage words are really foundational. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Again, that's what your microbiome wants to eat. A lot of plants and lots of fiber food without chemicals, antibiotics, or pesticides. And again, right back to Hippocrates, let food be thy medicine and medicine thy food. So again, Michael Pollan's food rules, we want healthy fats, the anti-inflammatory real food diet, and we do want to get into fermented foods in a bit and some of the fiber-rich foods. All right. So, all right, nutrient-dense, minimally processed, herbs and spices. I want to say something about bone broth. It contains collagen, which again helps to form that protective barrier between the gut and toxins. So, and again, if you would like information about that, contact us. Our clinical health consultants can talk you through that. So I'm going to get to the fermented foods real quick. Okay, so prebiotics, so the fiber. All fiber is good for us, but there's specific types of fiber that our gut bugs really love, and we will be mentioning those in just a quick minute. All right. So probiotics are the good gut bugs. They're present in a healthy microbiome. They could be consumed in food, fermented foods, which we will list, and they can also be taken as a supplement, but there's lots of cautions with the supplement. The prebiotics are the fiber that feed the probiotics. And remember, diversity is key. The more variety of fiber in the diet, the more diversity and health of the microbiome you'll have. So here we go, fermented foods. So plain kefir, plain yogurt. Now, otherwise there's going to be a lot of added sugar to them. Now, you might find that just the plain kefir and yogurt, you don't want to have that alone, but add fruit, add cinnamon, use them in smoothies, and they make a wonderful base for your smoothies and add a lot of those good, healthy probiotics. Kombucha, which is a fermented tea, but again, watch for those carbohydrates and sugars. And kimchi, tempeh, sauerkraut, and pickles, they have an asterisk there because they also provide fiber. They're made from plant-based foods. So they are going to give you the prebiotic and the probiotic. And very important, these foods all need to be refrigerated and not processed after they're fermented. So you want to see the words, contains live and active cultures. So the sauerkraut and the pickles that are on the shelf at room temperature do not contain probiotics. It's only the sauerkraut, the pickles, and the kimchi that were naturally fermented with the lactic acid bacteria that is on the vegetables. So key there. And aim for 1 serving per day. If it's sauerkraut or something, or the kimchi, it's just 1 or 2 tablespoons, or like a cup of the yogurt or a cup of the kefir. So 1 per day. All right, and we talk about the different types of fiber. And again, please send or ask for the PowerPoint so you can get the total list here, but I want to leave some time for questions. So these are some of the prebiotic power foods, and they contain a specific fiber called inulin. So again, just as you're looking for that variety in your diet, try to include them. Jerusalem artichoke, asparagus, bananas, again, just simple. Easy to incorporate. Garlic, greens, especially dandelion greens, but all greens are very good for us. Jicama, onions, chicory, acacia gum are very high in the inulin, and the other ones listed are just very good sources of fiber and antioxidants as well. All right, so just to summarize, the idea that the lack of dietary fiber has changed the modern microbiota and explains much of Western disease is currently one of the prevailing theories in microbiota research. Providing more dietary fiber for microbiota fermentation would likely result in weight loss, lower inflammation, and decreased risk of Western diseases, not to mention a more stable, diverse microbiota. Doesn't want that, right? So there's some information there on the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 that you can find going to the Environmental Working Group. And what that is, again, since most of us cannot afford to buy all organic, they have broken it down for you. Please, if you can at all, try to get these particular fruits and vegetables organic because they've been tested and shown to contain the most pesticides, whereas the Clean 15 has a lower level of those pesticides. So you can conserve your food dollar with the other Dirty Dozen buying those organic. All right, and again, you want to look for that symbol. All right, so just concepts again. The food is the embodiment of our soil. We're in this symbiotic relationship with the soil, the animals, the plants that are on the earth. We need to broaden our idea of what nutrients are, because nutrients do include the microbes and very diverse micronutrients. And as the soil is depleted and just sprayed with pesticides, that has an impact on our gut garden, making us vulnerable to disease as well. All right, so again, just you saw this slide before, but I just wanted to reiterate, every time we eat, we are seeding our gut microbiome. Okay, our diet determines which strains of bacterial species and strains thrive in our intestines. This affects the composition of that second genome and therefore our own health. All right, and just quickly with supplements. Talk to your providers. We definitely are advocating food first. Research is ongoing. We are not anywhere near being able to be very prescriptive with the probiotics. There's stool testing that makes it a little more precise, but even with that, the needs change over time. And there would be some contraindications. People with small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, or if you have a debilitating disease. So please talk to your provider. This is a very individualized situation with the probiotic supplements. And again, with the foods, that's a stable foundation. That would be like, remodeling the entire infrastructure of the economy as opposed to just having tourists come and go, which would be more like just the probiotic supplements. So we always preach food first. More of those fermented foods, more of those fiber-rich foods. All right, then these are supplements. Again, talk to your physician and our clinical health consultants. These can help. Herbs, stay tuned in the fall. We are going to be having an entire webinar on the health benefits of herbs and spices. But the ones listed here are particularly anti-inflammatory and helpful for our gut microbiome. All right, and that's just, avoiding that stress, those mind-body principles of sleep, breath work, exercise, spending time in nature. I like to call that vitamin N. Whatever things replenish you, meditation, prayer, relationships, exercise, volunteer work. These are all very important with our emotional health. So, and then the microbiome, it's just, these discoveries show us again that everything affects everything. We're all in this together. What's good for me, us, the planet, it's all the same. And it really abolishes a lot of boundaries between us as humans and our environment. And it gives us so much hope about the body's ability to heal itself. It's greater than we ever thought possible. So, okay. How much time do we have for questions? And again, here's, you can reach out to us by phone or email, and our CHCs would be happy to help you individualize all of this information. All right.
Awesome, Tammy. Thank you. We do have a number of questions to get through. If she doesn't get to your question with the time we have remaining, we'll have Tammy email you with the answers to your questions, okay? So again, the slides, a couple of you have already requested the slides. We'll send you a PDF version of the slides. We'll use the email that you registered with, unless you provide us with a different one that you prefer that we use. We'll also send you the webinar flyers for 2016. All the ones in the past, you can click on the registration links and listen to their recordings, and all the ones in the future you can sign up for off of that. What else? Health consultant consultations. We're included in your lab work for 12 months from the last time it was drawn. So you basically have a free dietitian with your lab work for 12 months from your last labs. So these are, our webinars are of course open to the public. Anybody can attend. We advertise them on our Facebook page. So if you are joining us and don't have labs, we encourage you to get some and get connected with us. Our website is www.truehealthdiag.com, and you can find us on Facebook page, True Health Diagnostics. All right, now, questions. Should I take a daily probiotic supplement, Tammy?
Oh my goodness. Okay, I knew that question was going to come up. And again, like I said, please talk to your healthcare provider. And just as I've been listening to different lecturers and webinars and on this, everyone is saying that they can't say yes or no. But when they're asked, do you take one, they all say yes. So I do, but I rotate the different probiotics that I do take, because if you are taking one particular strain in a supplement, it could actually be causing harm, because remember, it's so much about that delicate balance. So you could have too many of a good gut bug, and that could be disrupting that balance. So just proceed with caution, talk to your providers. If you do, I would say if you do choose to use a probiotic, mix it up, vary them, but always, always food first. Because again, you can take all the probiotics in the world, but if you have a leaky gut and you're not eating the fiber and you're not building that solid infrastructure of that probiotic, ecosystem microbiome, the probiotics are not going to be as helpful. So you have to have that foundation first. Again, there's stool testing to be a little more diagnostic and precise about it, but there's very few people that really even know how to use the results of the stool testing at this point. So proceed with caution, stay tuned, the research is continuing.
Okay. Tammy, how to stop sugar cravings? Are frozen meals like Weight Watchers, Lean Cuisine, Healthy Choice, etc. okay?
Okay, good question. I always say, think of our choices on this continuum from the very best thing we could do to the worst thing we could do. And, life's not perfect. We all, are busy on the run. So, of course, ideally eating whole, real foods from the earth with lots of intact fiber, like unprocessed, like a salad, with some leftover salmon or chicken or some legumes with lots of good fiber would be the best choice. But if you're in a situation where you're rushed or whatnot, again, there's healthier, even with the frozen meals, just look for ones that are advertised, I don't know, more natural. And the bottom line, again, is read that ingredient list. If there's 50 ingredients and you don't understand, you can't pronounce half of them, you want to minimize, I guess, the intake of those types of frozen meals. But there are healthier ones out there.
Okay. Tammy, what about psyllium flakes and bran cereal flakes, things like that?
Oh, excellent question. Yes. So again, you want the basis of your fiber intake to be your veggies. You want to have at least 6 servings a day of those non-starchy veggies, the whole plant foods. But most definitely adding in some of those supplemental fibers like the psyllium powder, you know, flax seeds ground, they must be ground, chia seeds, oat bran, yes, as a supplemental. But when you're adding those additional fibers, and you want to be very careful with your water intake, right? You don't want to cause a problem there. So don't go overboard with it. I would say, you know, a couple tablespoons a day, mix it up, and make sure you're getting at least those 8 glasses of water per day when you're adding those extra, at all times, but especially if you're adding those additional you know, powdered sources of fiber.
Tammy, can you tell us, there's several questions about artificial sweeteners, Splenda, aspartame, stevia, and their effect on the gut bugs?
Yes, like I said, there's ongoing research with them. I have one here on the counter. I could actually see if I could, you know what, it's in your reference list. I have the link to that exact research article if you'd like to get access to that. But they do disrupt our microbiome. They are inflammatory. Now, stevia seems, they haven't really found a connection with stevia with the microbiome, but the other ones, you know, aspartame, the Splenda, they definitely have. So if you still choose to use a non-calorie sweetener, it would appear at this point that a little bit of stevia, and we say a little bit, just the least amount possible. If people want to use stevia, I advise getting it in the liquid form with the dropper, because you can titrate very carefully the amount that you're getting and use as little as possible. That hasn't been linked specifically with disrupting the microbiome, but the others have.
Great. Touch, at about 2 minutes left, can you touch a little bit more on fermented foods? As far as nothing being on the shelf, only refrigerated, are there special ingredients to look for?
Okay, good question, and I know I kind of breezed through that, so I apologize. So again, back in the day, you know, and every ethnic group has their own source of fermented foods. That is how they preserved food back in the day. And it's when the microorganisms, and specifically with vegetables, it's lactic acid microorganisms, they actually start to eat, if you will, the fiber that's, let's say it's sauerkraut. They're going to start to eat the fiber and digest it and reproduce. And as they produce more of themselves, the lactic acid bacteria, and there are other microorganisms, that's where we get that tangy taste that we associate with the sauerkraut and the pickles. It comes from those actual microorganisms, and they're very fragile. They need to be refrigerated. If you heat the pickles or the sauerkraut to process it, you're going to kill the microorganisms. So they're not shelf stable. They need to be refrigerated. So the conventional pickles and sauerkraut on the shelf have bypassed the fermentation step, and they've just added vinegar for that tangy taste that we associate with the pickles and sauerkraut. So we want that tangy taste to actually be coming from the microorganisms. Same with the yogurts and the kefirs. They have to pasteurize milk, it's a law, but you want to look for the kefir and the yogurt that's been fermented after it was heated and pasteurized, because again, if you heat it, it's going to destroy those microorganisms. So somewhere on those products, it will, because they want you to know that they have the microorganisms in there, the live and active cultures, they will state that somewhere. There's a couple brands I know you can get at Whole Foods, Bubby's Pickles, Bubby's Sauerkraut, Farmhouse has a lot of different sorts of kimchis and sauerkrauts. I had one I got a couple weeks ago. It was a smoky kale kimchi that was delicious. You can make it yourself. We should probably look into having a webinar on just making fermented foods. So I hope that answers the question.
It does for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for being with us today. Again, we'll send you the slides if you requested them and try to address any questions we didn't get to today, okay? Join us for the next webinars we have. We hope to see you again. It's good to see some familiar names. Some of my patients personally are on here, so I'm glad you guys are here. All right, y'all. Thanks. Have a good day.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.